you've been watching the last couple of reviews that we've done on House of Cars, and you'll know that what we've been reviewing is some really rather good hot hatches. Now the hot hatch is a brilliant genre of car, I think, because it gives you the sort of like the performance and sort of like the driver engagement of a proper sports car, performance car, but obviously the practicality of a family hatchback. But it won't have escaped your notice that sort of like the family hatchback has changed over the years, you know, from way back in the 1980s and the 1990s, you know, sort of like there's less of them around now. People are much preferring SUVs and crossovers. But what happens if you want performance along with your SUV and your crossover? Well, of course you can get them, you know, there's no doubt there are some performance SUVs out there. The only thing is that they tend to be really quick in a straight line, but unless you're going for something like, say, a Porsche Cayenne or maybe an Aston Martin DBX, they maybe fall apart a little bit in the corners. And of course, you can't really escape the laws of physics, can you? You know, they're big, tall vehicles at the end of the day. Making them handle like a hatchback, well, it's not really going to work. But what happens if you need the practicality of the SUV, or you like the practicality of an SUV, but you want the driver engagement of a hot hatch? Well, have no fear, because Cupra make this, the Formentor, which is an SUV for hot hatch people. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the newly revised Cupra Formentor. Please sit yourself down, make yourself comfortable in the House of Cars. Now, before I get started on this week's road test review of the newly revised Cupra Formentor, it would be a little bit daft of me not to make sure that I've reminded you to subscribe to the House of Cars channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button down below, because that's the way you'll be notified when our next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Once you've watched the review, if you enjoy it, and obviously I hope you do, then give it a little thumbs up, and don't forget, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the cars that I feature on the channel, such as the Cupra Formentor, and of course on the House of Cars channel on the whole. Now, the Formentor, it's Cupra's best-selling car, and by some margin. And the other thing was, it was their first standalone car as a separate manufacturer. Whilst it wasn't their first car, they'd already done the Leon and the Ateca. They were effectively Cupra versions of Seats, whereas the Formentor was all their own work. It's not shared, it's not a warmed over Seat, it's not shared with anybody else, and it's not shared throughout the other Volkswagen brands, the Volkswagen Group brands. You know, you won't find sort of like this, a version of this wearing a Volkswagen badge or an Audi badge or a Skoda badge. It's all Cupras. And you can understand why it's been the success that it has in some respects, because as a car, it sort of has a foot in both camps, doesn't it? It's got that look about a crossover slash SUV coupe that people tend to want these days and are very popular in buyers. But of course, it has the drivetrain that you would expect from a hot hatchback. However, my question is, does that mean it's trying too hard to be, you know, a bit of both of everything, and therefore it's not going to really succeed at one thing? Can you really have that genuine sort of like fun and engagement from a car that has, dare I suggest, the sort of like the practicality of that crossover, but still have the fun and engagement that you get from a hot hatchback? Or are you better off going for the Leon, you know, the proper, you know, the hot hatch that Cupra do, that we tested the other week? Well, of course, we're going to put it through a road test review and find out. However, as always, before we do start, let's just take a brief snapshot about the main points of the newly revised Formentor. So the Formentor now gets the revised styling that we first saw in the new Terramar SUV, and of course the Leon hatchback and estate. Like I said, it remains Cupra's best-selling model in 2024, with global Cupra sales increasing over 5% compared to the 2023 results. 3 powertrains are available, either a straightforward petrol, mild hybrid or plug-in hybrid. Power outputs range from 150 PS to 333 PS depending on model. And prices start from just over £33,500 and go up to over £51,000 depending on which drivetrain and specification that you choose. So a little bit like the Leon that I reviewed a few weeks back, the Formentor has gone through some styling changes, some revisions to its infotainment and its interior, and of course some new mechanical upgrades to keep it fresh and to keep it relevant. But my question is it trying to be, as I say, a bit of a jack of all trades but master of none? Well, of course, the only way we're going to find that out is by putting it through the thorough House of Cars road test review and finding out. Now, I really like Cupra as a brand. I really like what they stand for. And if you watch my Leon review, and if you've maybe watched the review I did of the Cupra Born, the electric car over on Auto EV, then you'll know that I used to own a Seat Leon Cupra R. So I've always had a bit of a soft spot for the brand. But I genuinely didn't think that Cupra as a standalone brand would actually work. But boy was I wrong, because they have turned into a real success story. And they're really forging, I think, their own path, you know, sort of like through the automotive world. They tried to be, they said they're going to try and be sort of like a Spanish Alfa Romeo. I think they're being a bit more successful than Alfa Romeo at the moment. They seem to be gauging customers really, really well. And the products that they're offering are doing, I think, a sterling job, you know, of making people aware of the Cupra brand. The styling, if you've got the old Cupra, you'll immediately spot some new revisions. And of course, it's this new styling design language, if you like, that they've got running through their cars now. It's very shark-like. I think they use the word shark, you know, obviously the fish, as a way to describe it, where you've got this sort of nose, the shark-like nose here. Now, we saw a little bit like this in the Taviscan, their new electric car, which is sort of an SUV coupe, not unlike the Skoda Enyaq coupe, that sort of size of car. And then when a few months back, when I was over in Spain with the new Taramar, that was the first of the combustion engine cars to get it. And of course now it's followed on with the Leon and the Formentor, so all the cars now look like this, apart from the Ateca, which still has the old look about it, interestingly. And you can still buy. I like this negative space here, but unlike sort of like the Leon, where it was all moulded into one, you've got this little black sort of like intake here, this here, it just goes in there, obviously to help with cooling, but the main cooling part is obviously down here. The grille has moved all the way down here, but it's a really heavily sculpted front end now. Of course, the triangular design that they've got going on here, with the big sort of like lights there, but then on the sort of like the whole light unit itself is made up of smaller triangles through it, and of course you get the big V sort of like, as I always think, it's a bit of a transformer looking Cupra badge with that sort of like brushed copper on it. That I think looks lovely on the car. They might want to start thinking about offering a bit more exciting colours in some respects, because the last two I've had have been grey. Now this isn't a flat grey, but it's that kind of primer grey. You know that, I don't remember what they call this particular, graphene grey, that was it. This is called graphene grey. And of course at the moment I'm filming in December and I've been using this car and I've been really busy. So of course it's looking filthy. A nice bright red maybe every now and again, Cupra, would that hurt you maybe? Or a nice bright blue, hey, maybe, come on. Move away from these grey colours. But in fairness, it does work, and it makes the sort of like the bronze, the copper stand out, I think. So maybe they've got it right. This sort of like area here, this sort of like black area down at the bottom here, as I say, is where your air intake is, and all the cooling goes into there. And they get nice little sort of like almost teeth, these little fangs, I think, look lovely on the car. I think it's a really handsome and distinctive looking car from the front, and there's some nice lines just coming down the bonnet as well. Gives it a nice muscular edge, and the way they sort of like flare up at the side and then drop into the wings. It's a really good looking car from the front, and as I say, it's different enough to the Leon. You know, it does stand apart from the others. It's not just a Leon and stilts. It has its own style, and it's a style I think that really works. There's some nice aero work on the car as well. You get some vents just at the side of the bumper that takes the airflow around these wheels. Now, you get 18-inch wheels just on the base V1 model. All other Formentors get 19s as standard all the way through the range. Now, a bit like the Leon review, there is quite a lot within the actual Formentor range. There's a lot to discuss. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, because we're going to concentrate on this car that I have, which is a VZ1 with the 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine, like the Leon, but the power is up to 333 PS. We'll talk about that in the technical section, but I'll briefly give you a run through the different trims and stuff a bit later on, but I'm not going to focus too much on the rest of them, okay, and point out differences. Let's just focus on this car, yeah? That nice strong line again. Remember, we saw it in the Leon, and it just comes along there. But here on the Formentor, while it just starts to fade a little bit, it then comes back out and then kicks up and then comes round the back here, just to sort of like disappear at the top of the tail there. It gives this sort of like rear wheel arch a real sort of like sort of like almost a butch look about it. It's got a real kind of haunch to it, and I really like that. I do like the heavily contrasting sort of like sills and wheel arches on this car. The body colour, body colour, they're painted. They're not sort of like, you know, sort of like just sort of like black plastic. You know, they are actually sort of like they're gloss black, and I think it really works against this graphene grey. And if my memory serves me correctly, on the older car it was almost flipped round the other way, wasn't it? You could get these silver with the darker body colours, which I always thought looked nice as well. But I think it's a really good looking car in side profile. You see what I was talking about? It's almost coupe-esque at the back, because it's got quite a steeply raked rear window on the car. It's not quite a tall upright SUV. If you need something a bit more practical on that side, they do the Ateca still, or the new Tarama. You do get the roof rails on it, so again, if you're thinking about it from a family hold-all style of view, you know, you're off down to France or something, you're taking your bikes with you, you've got kayaks or a roof tent, then obviously you can buy crossbars and they'll fit that to it, so there's an element of practicality on it as well. The doors open right down under the sills, and that's something I love, because you wear light trousers like I do sometimes. On a day like today, getting in and out of it, you're dragging your chinos across a dirty sill, or you've got a floaty skirt on. You don't want that getting muddy. So I like the fact that the door wraps right underneath the sill. That's a really nice design touch, say it. And of course, you've got privacy glass and petrol cap there. But yeah, good looking car, really distinctive, and I think really stands out on the road. There's nothing else really other like it. And again, same round the back, you know, lots of sharp angles, lots of creases, lots of sort of like nice triangular sort of like V shapes and things at work here. New light bar as well. So look, when it illuminates up, you get the Cupra badge illuminated there now, because you can do that. I mean, it's filthy at the moment, unfortunately, but look at that, isn't that lovely? Now with the VZ cars, you get the dark chrome titanium finish, sort of like badging on it, which again gives it just that little area of premium finish over the other cars in the range, which is quite nice. Lower down, you of course you get the black sort of like, you know, contrast like you do around the side there, and of course quad tailpipes on this model. Lovely big roof spoiler, and this is, I think, quite interesting. Rear wiper. Obviously this more kind of coupe-like SUV crossover style of car, a lot of manufacturers don't fit a rear wiper and say, oh, it spoils the lines of it. But the practicality, it's got one, and I like that. So, good looking car. It's familiar Formentor in some respects, but changed for the new design language. And I think they've changed just enough, in my opinion. I still think it's a really handsome looking car. I think it's very distinctive. I don't think there's a huge amount of other cars that kind of turn your heads in some respects, the way this car does in this sort of class. But as I always say, does it really matter what I think? You guys are out there buying these cars. Does it do it for you? Have you got the old Formentor? As I say, is this one interesting you because you like the design direction Seat have taken it in? You know, you think that's lovely, I really like what they've changed on the car. Or do you prefer the old one? Obviously, as always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, as far as boot space is concerned, it will depend on which Formentor model that you go for. If you go for a two-wheel drive on a mild hybrid car, then it's 450 litres, but this drops to just 345 litres if you go for a plug-in hybrid. However, this car is the most powerful petrol model, which means that it's also four-wheel drive, so it gets a 420 litre boot. Right, let's check out the back seat. Oh, there's plenty of room back here. Now, okay, I'm only 5'8", and I get that, but that's my driving position, and that's me sat behind me. Now, the two things about this, first of all, is there's still plenty of room if someone was to nudge that seat back. So say my other half, Liz, who's 6 foot, you know, she's got long legs, she would nudge the seat back a little bit. There's still be plenty of room for me there, no doubt about that. Also, as well, I like to drive with my seat right down. So there's plenty of room underneath the seat. I can get my feet right underneath it. So it's good back here, absolutely. So family of 4. Well, interestingly, when I finish this review today, I'm taking Liz and her daughter Katie, and Katie, one of Katie's best friends, another wee 10-year-old lassie, out to the pantomime this afternoon. Oh no, you're not. Oh yes, I am, I hear you all say. So again, if you were thinking about it for a family of 4, there's plenty of room back here, absolutely plenty. Plus as well, the backs of the seats, they're nicely sort of like sculpted, so there's a comfortable, you know, seating position back here. They support your shoulders quite well. What I should also have said when we were in the boot, the rear bench splits 60-40, but you do have a ski hatch in the centre, which means also you get this armrest that folds down, where I've got 2 cup holders in as well, so storage for their water bottles or their bottles of juice or whatever they're going to take with them this afternoon. No problem at all. Plus as well, there's door bins as well, and pockets on the backs of the front seats, so plenty of storage as well. You've also got 2 USB-C connectivity ports back here, so again, if they're charging their devices up, there's plenty, they can do that from the back, and as I say, it's absolutely fine, you know, in terms of space. There is also a transmission tunnel, so if you're trying to get 3 across the back, you will, in terms of the space in the middle, there's a reasonable amount of space, but they'll let you straddle with their legs, and I'd suggest it is only really for kiddies. Again, tight flaps for the Isofix points, Cupra. You should maybe think about changing that. But yeah, there's a good amount. Oh, and I'd mention headroom's good too. You know, so again, if you were sort of, if you're thinking about it from a teenager point of view, you know, you're 2 are taller than me, then there's plenty of headroom back here. So yes, as a family car, what more do you need? So it certainly ticks the practicality box, doesn't it? Right, up the front. Well, very similar to the, in fact, it's almost identical to the Leon that I drove the other week. And so they've changed a few bits and pieces to the interior. They've revised the infotainment system, which is a good thing because, you know, the Volkswagen Group infotainment system has always come in for a bit of a hard time, in fairness, including myself over an Auto EV, in fairness. And that's changed slightly, so I'll quickly go through that. I don't want to talk too much because I feel like a waffle when I talk about the interiors, but it's important to tell you what the car's like. 12.1 inch infotainment screen. Let's start here. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are standard, but you get, you know, it's much slicker, the software in it now, so it moves quite quickly now. You know, it was a bit laborious before, and again, it's very clear. That's the one thing I'll say about it. It's very crisp and clear, you know, when you're using it, so it's quite easy to use, you know, at a glance. So obviously you get things like an inbuilt navigation system, or you can use your default Waze or Google Maps if you've got CarPlay or Android Auto on or whatever. Okay, so that's that. As I say, you've got wireless smartphone mirroring. There's a wireless charging pad down in there for your phones. Now, obviously, the spec I'm not going to labour on too much because, as I say, there's quite a variety of cars in the Formentor range. This is a VZ1, so the VZ is the faster. There's V1, 2 and 3, and then there's VZ1, 2, sorry, VZ1, VZ2, VZ3. VZ is shortened word veloz, meaning fast in Spanish. So these are the sort of faster, the performance orientated versions of the car. But so they'll all get different sort of like bits of spec depending obviously on which one you go for, a 1, 2 or a 3. For instance, the dashboard on this one is more the kind of rubber finish feel, whereas on the Leon I had, it was almost like a neoprene sort of finish. And you'll see this car doesn't have the Seatbelt cup seats. You have to go to the VZ3 for those. These seats are okay. Interestingly enough, Liz has been driving this car as well as me, and I thought she'd really like it because, you know, she had the Seat Leon Cupra years ago, and she likes now an SUV, and I thought this would tick both boxes. She wasn't really that fussed about it. She said it should either be one thing or the other, so it's interesting how she felt about it, you know, so maybe an Ateca would be more her bag. But she didn't feel the seats were as nice in this as they were in the, you know, the cup seats. You know, she said she just felt that they're all right, but she said she just didn't feel they were that special or that comfortable in some respects. I've been okay with them, in fairness, but obviously we're all, you know, we're different sizes and different shapes in the world, so some people will like them, some people won't. I think they're all right. I get on okay with them. They don't have the level of adjustability, however, of the cup seats, you know, so whilst the length of the squab is fine, you can't adjust it. You know, there's less lateral support, there's no doubt about it. You know, the head restraint, it's all right, you know, it's fine. But these ones also are manual, you know, whereas you get the electric, you know, adjustment on the cup seats. Anyway, I'm waffling a bit there. You got a climate menu. Oh, sorry, switch on ignition. Let me start this car up. There we go. There's our climate menu. So you can see there you can go more in depth. You've got heated steering wheel on this one. You've also got heated seats as well, so that's good, you know, in that sense. But it still retains these slider controls for the temperature, you see, but they are illuminated at night. That's the one thing I will say, that it was always a big criticism of these because they weren't illuminated at night, and the volume one in the middle. You can now see them at night, and obviously, so they work better. I still don't think they're just as good as turning a knob. There's no doubt about that. But it's a big improvement to what they were, you know, so that's excellent, so that's fine. So there's a more in-depth climate menu, and then there's your other things there, so driver profile, vehicle settings going in here. Now, you've obviously got some advanced driver assistance systems, some ADAS systems, such as lane keep assist, speed limit warning. This is where you turn it off. You can set these up as favourites at the top here, so when you swipe down, that's what they become. These aren't on this particular car, they were on the Leon, so you must be able to sort of like configure these how you like it, because as I say, when I was driving the Leon, I just flicked it down and turned them off. These are different things like the stop start, the Bluetooth, the wireless thing, so that's obviously slightly different in this particular car, so you must be able to configure it how you want it, which is excellent, you know, that's very good, you know, you can do that. So there we go. Part reverse camera as well, so that's excellent as well, so you've got all of that, so yeah, much better infotainment system. It's really changed, it's quite slick, it's easy to use, you get used to where everything is, and as I say, because you've got those shortcut buttons as well, that's a nice way of being able to do things. Now you, oh sorry, I didn't mean to do that, did I? Hang on, where am I? Now you can, so you press that drive button, it brings up the driver profiles. That's also mirrored by this button on the steering wheel. So there you've got your comfort, performance, Cupra individual. You've now got a further two, you got off-road, and you get drift. Woohoo! Drift profile is intended solely for private roads or racetracks and should only be used by someone with appropriate driving skills. Do you really want to activate drift? Of course I do. Of course I do. What are you going to say? Actually, no. I don't think so. I'm probably not good enough. This is usually ended up by a car going backwards into a hedge, preceded by the words, watch this. But anyway, you've got a drift mode in it now, you know, so you've got all of this stuff here. And again, you can just scroll, but you can also scroll through it using the button there. So excellent. You've got the virtual cockpit, which again, I really like. I've always liked this, and it's very clear and it's very concise. Again, sort of like Volkswagen group cars, a lot of them have it, where you can really configure this how you want it. So big dials, maybe the map in the middle. You can have a trip meter in the middle, or you can have your driver assistance sort of like read out in the middle. And if you press the button view, it then changes it, so the dials are now reconfigured, and it's a more open map in the middle now. You know, and again, it's the same things. And again, you press it, you can get rid of the dials altogether, so it's just numericals down at the bottom, and really sort of like, so there's a lot of configuration. Or you can have it just as a big rev counter with a speed in the middle. So there's a lot of configuration that you can do, depending how you feel as a driver. Steering wheel, I did say on the Leon review, it's a bit odd. I don't like a thick steering wheel. I find these possibly a little bit now going on to the thin side. You know, maybe a little bit thicker would be nice. But it is a nice wheel to hold, in fairness. Your hands immediately fall to sort of like the 9:15 position, which is what I like. And like the Leon, they have resisted the temptation to fit those infernal touch-sensitive controls that the Born has. So you're not liable to brush them with the heel of your hand as you're manoeuvring the car around, turning the volume up or changing track and radio stations and stuff. So they're physical buttons that you have to press that are on the steering wheel. And it's all the usual suspects, you know, cruise control over this side with some volume. And over here you can activate your heated steering wheel, track selection, and, you know, configuring that. You saw there you've got your engine stop start button on that one there, and that's your driver profile modes there. So yeah, it's a really nice steering wheel to hold. It's really nice and easy to use, and your whole driving position is actually quite nice. Now, this is the interesting thing that I found with this car, and maybe I'll talk a bit more when we actually do drive it. When you sit in the Formentor, it's quite odd because you do sit quite low in the car. I mean, it's, you know, you see it and you go, oh, it's a crossover / SUV style of car. But from the driver's point of view, when you're driving down the road, I was driving alongside a BMW X1 the other day, you know, their small SUV, and it was the older model, so it was the smaller one they used to have, and I was sitting way down lower than that. So you don't actually sit that high. It's quite weird. When you sit in this car as a driver, you really sit in it, not on it. and it gives you a really low hunker, and that helps with the drive of it. That helps with the whole sort of like driving dynamics. So you're not sitting there, you don't feel like you're sitting in this big tall SUV, and I think that's what Lizzie's point was. You know, it's like she's saying it's neither one thing nor the other, but some people like that. I like it. I like the driving position being quite low. I quite like the fact you can really get low down in the seat, and you know, you feel quite sporty in it. And as I say, the seats themselves are nice. They're not as nice as the Cup seats in the VZ3, no doubt about it. You know, but I don't mind them, they're good. Storage is good too, so see, wireless charging pad there, you've got a wee slot there for your wallet and your keys there. You also get your cup holders back here, and an armrest that you can hold up. There'll be enough for a couple of Mars bars in there, that's good. And of course you get door bins as well, where there's a boot release down here. The materials, they're nice. However, you do notice the difference in the lower spec cars. You do notice the difference, you know, with this VZ1 as opposed to the VZ3 Leon that I had. You know, there's a harder plastic on top of the door. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not criticising it. I'm just saying you notice the difference in the materials. And Cupra is one manufacturer that I absolutely applaud with their use of materials. You still get this Dynamica material on the seat. They still talk about, you know, a good amount of recyclable materials, sustainability in the build of the car. You know, using different recycled materials for things like the car mats and the seat material. So there's still all of that, and I love the fact that Cupra. Did I say Seat before? It doesn't matter. I love the fact that Cupra talk about that. It's one of my favourite things about them. They make a big focus on it. But there's no doubt about it, you can feel the difference when you move into the higher spec cars with the different materials in the doors. But it's still solid. It still feels like it's going to last. You still get this soft kind of rubberized material on the top of the dash. The only little bit is this slightly metallic finished plastic that runs across the dash. But I can put up with that for the rest of it. You get the nice brushed copper accents around it, you know, on the steering wheel, around the buttons and things, and the stitching as well as that copper finish. So again, it ties it in with the whole brand image and the brand colours. Dash is easy to see. You get a good driving position. There's a good amount of adjustment on the seat. Yes, the Cup seats are better, and that's nice and, you know, relatively easy to use once you get used to it. So there's very little to fault in terms of the front you know, accommodation with the car as well. There's enough space for two people, and it's a really nice interior to be in. So it's a big tick for me. I think it's a really good interior. Well done, Cupra. Now, like I said, I'm not going to go through every single engine specification with you. I'll give you a brief rundown of what you get. So if you go for the V1, the V2 or the V3 cars, they're all 1.5 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged units, okay? And you basically get a choice there of either 150 PS or 204 PS, okay, which I think is a mild hybrid as well. That one has the mild hybrid unit as well. Now, that 150 PS model you can get with a manual transmission. Otherwise, that's it. They're all going to be the DSG style gearboxes with either 6 or 7 speeds, depending on the engine you go for. Okay, right. Then you jump up to the VZ. Remember what I said, VZ, Veloz, fast in Spanish. So these are the more powerful models that you get for the car. So you either get a 1.5 4-cylinder plug-in hybrid, which has 272 PS, or you get the straightforward 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine, which this car is, which is pumping out 333 PS. Now, this one is allied to an all-wheel drive system as well, okay, which is quite a clever sort of like rear, sort of like a twin clutch rear differential on it to divide the power up at the rear wheels. So this one does come with all-wheel drive if you do go for this one. The rest of them are front-wheel drive cars. Now, it's the EA 888 engine that the MQB Evo platform cars from Volkswagen Group get. So Golf GTI, Golf R, Audi S3, you know, the usual suspects, those cars. Now, there's also going to be a further option with this engine as well, a slightly lower powered version of this, just the 2-litre straightforward engine with 265 PS. That's coming out as well. Don't know when, but that's coming out soon as well. So, you know, maybe that might be an option for you as well to think about. Anyway, combined fuel economy for the car, well, it's quite a dip down, isn't it? It's round about 32 miles to the gallon that you get out of this 2-litre engine. Not ideal. It's also, it attracts 37% benefit in kind as well. So if you're a company car user, maybe this isn't the car for you in terms of this engine. I'm not saying, sorry, not the car, this particular engine option might not be for you. Maybe one of the plug-in hybrids might be the better, well, it certainly would be the better option for you when it comes to your benefit in kind. But yeah, 37% benefit in kind with this car. Right, let's get this out on the road and see how it does. Because as I say, the other week I was obviously driving the, I've driven quite a lot of Cupras over the last sort of like while. In some respects, I will say it wasn't so long since I was driving the Terramar. I think I keep pronouncing it wrong. And I was driving the Cupra Born on Auto EV, and I've been driving obviously the Leon for House of Cars. And as I say, I want to feel the difference with this car to the Leon, and there is a difference, okay? There is a difference, which I'll get to in a second. So, let's talk about power, because this is a powerful car. 333 PS, and it distributes it through all four wheels. So it's an all-wheel drive car. But think of it as all-wheel drive in the performance and grips scenario, rather than, you know, off-road ability that you might, you know, think of with an SUV. It's not really about that, you know. It's more to do with grip, and again, I'm going to chat about that in a second. Anyway, this thing does 0 to 60 miles an hour in 4.8 seconds. 4.8 seconds. This is quick. This is a quick old car, this thing. You know? This is, yeah, this is all right. Oh. So this does well. Somebody's had a little to do there, I think. So yeah, this is a quick car. 0 to 60, 4.8 seconds. Whew. Top speed's 155 miles an hour, if you're interested in that type of thing. Now, but it's the way in which it delivers the power which is quite interesting. So as I say, it's all-wheel drive. It has an electro-hydraulic torque splitter at the rear with 2 clutches. So in other words, what it's able to do is get the power to the wheel that needs it the most. So like I was saying, if you think of it more of a car, you know, an all-wheel drive car from a performance point of view rather than an off-road point of view, that's why it has it. The only thing I will say is this: whilst it is very, very fast, there's no getting away from that, and as I say, it does feel quite a quick car. You've got to be sort of going some to sort of like get the, you know, to really feel the full power of the car. Does that make sense? You've really got to sort of like delve deep, and you know, you've got to be sort of like, you know, I'm not saying driving aggressively, but you know what I mean. You've got to be looking for the performance in there, which makes me wonder whether or not, you know, this is the Formentor to have. Really, it's lovely to have it. It's fast, but would you sacrifice maybe some of that blistering pace just to have a little bit lower running cost? Maybe see the plug-in hybrid. You know, obviously it weighs more, so therefore, you know, you lose a bit of performance. But you know, in terms of the running costs, it's much lower than you get for this car. Anyway, there we go. Steering's good. Bit like the Leon, this just, and again, it's a familiar thing with this, like the Volkswagen Group cars. It's just off the dead centre of dead ahead is a bit of vagueness. It's only when you start to wind a bit more lock on that you start to get some feedback coming from the front. But it is quite a communicative chassis. I don't think it's as bad as the Leons. I think the steering's a bit sharper in the Formentor than it is in the Leon. I really do. There's a bit more feel to it, but it's just, you can just feel it as you come off the dead ahead, as I say, and you build in a bit of lock, it starts to come back. You know, you just get a slight lack of communication there. However, it's the suspension that I think is actually worth mentioning here, because this particular car has the dynamic chassis control on it. And where I think it's a bit better in the Formentor than it is in the Leon is when you're in the comfort mode, because you've got a bit more travel in the damper, because obviously the car is, you know, it's that crossover style rather than, you know, like a low down hot hatch. So it tends to deal with the surface imperfections better. There's a bit more wheel travel, so it allows a little bit more compliancy in the suspension. The other bit where you notice it is on, say, maybe bigger undulations on a more open road. You know, it just allows that, with that bit more travel, it just allows the damping unit just to deal with that undulation. It gives it more time to deal with it, and therefore it translates into being a slightly more comfortable car. So I think it's better than the Leon to drive, because you lose very little sharpness. You lose very little of the sort of like, you know, the chassis sort of like interaction with the car, because it's not a big tall SUV, but it's tall enough that it allows just, to say, a little bit more travel. So it makes it a more comfortable car in the day-to-day, and that is why I think this is a better car than the Leon. I really do. I think this is a lovely car. You know, if you're not sort of like on it, if you're just driving around locally, you're in the standard mode, you know, you're in comfort mode or whatever they call it, it just feels a more comfortable and more compliant car. There you go. Top tip for you there, folks. Real consumer advice. I quite like the brakes. Again, you know, like the Leon, they're good brakes. You know, they're Brembo brakes. And then if you sort of, you know, you stamp on them, there's a nice weight behind the pedals, a nice progression through the pedal, where you get this sort of, you know, the braking system starts to bite, you know. So yeah, nice braking system on the car. You know, and as I say, you know, it's not a small car, it's not a little car, it's not an Ibiza, is it? So, you know, it maybe needs a little bit of hauling up, but yeah, there's good feel from the pedal as you brake for a corner, and then as you turn in, so it's just that little bit, just as you turn in, you just go, oh, where's the grip, and you just feel it coming in as you get the wheel more. So yeah, there's a good car here, there's a really good car here. And then when you turn the wick up, so that's, I've been driving it in comfort mode, I go into sport mode. Oh yeah, and through the bends, it's got nice body control. It stays really nice. Oh yeah, this is good. This is really good. And again, there's not bounce, it's just that, it just gives that suspension a bit more time to deal with the bumps. Oh yeah, I like this car. Yeah, this is a good car. The engine noise is the same as you get in the Leon. They pipe a little bit in, and it's just not a particularly orally stimulating engine. Good engine, very good engine, but just not what you would call sonorous. You know, it's not like even that little blip on the downshift is doing itself. You know, you don't get sort of, you know, it's not like an Alpha Twin Spark or something like that where you get like a lovely rorty feel to it. It just all feels a little bit put on, a little bit fake, but I'll forgive it for that, because as I say, the engine itself is actually quite good. Now I'm just going to take down this bit of road here, because this is quite a bumpy bit of road round from my house, and I just always like to feel how it deals with, as you get down here at speed, how it deals with the imperfections. Yeah, it deals with it really, really well. Right, so that's the sort of like the chassis, that's the performance. Oh, I haven't really talked about the gearbox in fairness, but do I need to? I mean, it's fairly familiar stuff. At the moment, obviously, the car is up and down itself, because I'm in the sport mode, it's going through itself. If I want to adjust, if I want to pull back on a paddle, then I can do, and I've got a right paddle for upshift, left one for downshift. Again, I just feel for my little hands, the paddles are too far into the centre. I could do them being slightly longer out of the steering wheel towards the rim of the wheel. But other than that, nice responsive gearbox. There's the odd little bit where it lags a tiny bit, but not much. Not so much that you'd really notice, as I say, unless you were absolutely on it. This is a hugely enjoyable car to drive. I understand why this is the best-selling car, because it really does tick an awful lot of boxes. It's hard to see a compromise here in a lot of ways. As I say, my only thing is, do you really need the 330 PS one? That's the only thing I'm coming away from, is, would this be the one that I would go and choose? Because I see much higher running costs. you know, sort of like worse fuel economy, would you be better off with, say, a plug-in hybrid one? Or if you're not interested in any type of electrification, just sacrificing some of that all-out performance for the one that's coming out, the 265 PS car. I wonder whether that might be the sweet spot in the range. But as a car, the Formentor works for me. What a good car. Shall we talk about price now? Go on then, let's do that. Right, so Formentor range, as I say, starts with the V1 and then you move up to the V2 and V3 cars. And as I say, they've got the 1.5 litre engines, okay? So the V1 is your starter for 10, that's where the price starts at. And that comes in at £33,450. And I think that one's with the manual gearbox. I think that price is with the manual gearbox as well. And then those go up to the e-hybrid 204, that's the plug-in hybrid model. And that in top of the range V3 guys is £46,075. Okay, jump up to the VZ models, and the 272 PS VZ1 plug-in hybrid starts the range off, and that starts in at £44,845. All right, and then you go up to the VZ3 first edition e-hybrid, and that's at £51,790. So there's quite a broad range of price, isn't there? So this car here that I've got is a VZ1 with the 333 PS unit, so it's the most powerful option in the lowest spec of the VZ cars, if all that's just making sense. Starting price, which I think is probably could be a bit of a sweet spot if you're after performance. The starting price for this car here is £45,685, okay? But this particular one has the premium paint, the graphene grey, remember, as I say, that's its only option. So that pushes it up to £46,670. Now, interestingly, I hadn't realised this, Cupra, you now get a 5-year warranty with Cupra. So that's much better than sort of like the rest of the Volkswagen Group cars. So, you know, yes, it's not a cheap brand, but in some respects, they are sort of like, you know, helping you out in terms of running costs by, you know, giving you a peace of mind, dare I suggest, with a warranty that's 5 years now. So I think that's good. And they certainly seem to do quite well on residual values as well. They certainly seem to hold the value, these things. So yeah, overall whole life costs are pretty decent, I'd say. In many ways, there's a bit of a problem when it comes to the competition for this car, because what do you compare it to? It's a really difficult car to pigeonhole. And I'm not saying you should pigeonhole it, I'm just saying it's not as clear cut when you think about the competition for the car. Now, interestingly, at the moment, sitting on my driveway is a new Renault Rafale, which is another one of these sort of SUV coupe style of cars. And it's the same sort of list price as this car, but it's not as powerful. You know, it's only 200 horsepower, it's a hybrid. And there is going to be a more powerful plug-in hybrid coming out, which you could go, that would be a rival for this car. But that's going to be well in excess of £50,000. So, you know, and it's not really designed to be a performance car, the Rafale, in some respects. It doesn't have the sort of sporting pretensions that, say, the Cupra brand does. So it's not quite as clear cut. And the same would maybe go for something like, say, the Peugeot 408, which again is a sort of similar style of sort of fastback, coupe slash SUV slash whatever. You know, they're not easy cars to sort of define where it actually sits in the market. And they feel much bigger as well, those cars. Inside. So perhaps you might turn around and sort of like say, well, maybe something like a BMW X2, you know, that sort of coupe SUV style of car. Yes, absolutely, but you'll pay for the privilege. You know, it's a much more expensive car than this. And I know, because I ran an iX2 as a long-termer on Auto EV. Great car, not the best looking, certainly nowhere near as sharp looking as this. But you know, you pay quite a lot to have the, you know, the BMW. So as I say, it's a really difficult car to sort of find a direct rival to. So maybe from within Volkswagen Group, you are going to look at the other cars which are maybe more SUV orientated in some respects, which is something like the T-Roc R. You know, that from Volkswagen, or maybe Audi's SQ2. But that little Q2, I don't really, again, it's the styling of it. I just don't get on with it. This is a much better looking car. So it's quite unique, I think, the Formentor. The Formentor has always been, and remains so, a very likeable car. In fact, actually, that's doing it a little bit of an injustice, because this is a really good car. In fact, I'd go so far as to say, in some respects, it's a brilliant car, because it handles and performs a lot better dynamically than a lot of performance SUVs, which obviously this car is designed to sort of like straddle those two things, you know, between hot hatch and SUV, isn't it? Now, there's some people might question, well, what does it really offer you over the Leon, especially because you can have the Leon as an estate. And I do understand that. I understand that argument as well. But to those people, I would say this: it will come down to the style of car, what you actually prefer as a person. As I say, my other half, Liz, didn't really get on with the car. She doesn't really see the point of it. Personally, I prefer this to the Leon. I think it's a more distinctive car. I think it drives as well, if not actually a little bit better, because of that better suspension system in it as well. In fact, the only thing I will say is whether or not this particular one is the Formentor to have, because whilst there's no getting away from the fact it's a very fast car and offers a huge amount dynamically, you've really got to be going some to really extract the best out of it, which makes me think that maybe one of the plug-in hybrids, I'd sacrifice a little bit of the performance to have the lower running costs and maybe the more overall usability of, say, the plug-in hybrid, or maybe the new sort of like lower powered petrol one that's coming in. But it's easy to understand why that these things sell in the numbers that they do. It's easy to understand why the Formentor is Cupra's best-selling car, because it's also Cupra's best car. Thank you for watching another road test review on House of Cars. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already. And once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button that's down below, because if you do that, you'll be notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. As I say, if you have enjoyed this week's review, then please give it a little thumbs up, and of course don't forget, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think of Cupra's Formentor. Do you have one? Have you got one of the older ones? Have you been running it? Has it been a good car for you? Has it not been a good car for you? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, if you're into social media and you're a fan of the Instagram, then I'm there as well. So it's at House of Cars 1973. So please give me a follow there as well, because that certainly helps the channel. And remember, whether or not it is fast cars, or whether it's slow cars, whether it's new cars or old cars, large cars or small cars, you will find them all here in the House of Cars. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.